You're listening to the Better Relationship After Baby podcast, where we believe that your relationship can be stronger than ever after having a baby. It just takes tools, conversations, and support to help you get there. I'm Chelsea Skaggs, certified life and relationship coach, mom of two, and survivor and thriver of tough marriage challenges after babies. I am committed to helping couples just like you improve your communication skills, connection points, and personal confidence so that you can have the life and family you've always dreamt of. Now, let's get to today's episode. I am so excited to share this episode with you guys because this is one of the behind the scenes with another mama podcast episodes. We are going to just have a chat with a mom who is going to share a little bit of her story, and then we're going to get into one of my favorite topics, which is processing styles, how it's impacting her husband, their family, and just work through it. Give a few ideas, get into maybe where we can break some patterns and make some progress on this topic, because I think sometimes it's really helpful to hear another mom share their experience. And while it might not be the exact same as yours, I want you to walk away from this knowing that, one, you're not alone, you're not crazy, you're not broken, and that we are all on this journey of working on these skills and working through these common sticking points. And I think that some of the things that are going to be insightful and helpful for Mallorie will also be some takeaways for you. So thank you, Mallorie, for being willing to join us today. It's a honor to just be able to, be face to face across the screen and get to know you and talk through the areas that you're looking to just grow and get some new tools. So before we get started, before we get super juicy, will you tell us just a background of you and your husband? When did you meet? Where did you meet? What was oh my gosh, he's the one? And then you can tell us a little bit about how your family has evolved over the years.
Sure. Awesome. Yeah. So Kyle and I are actually high school sweethearts. We've been dating since, I don't know, end of 11th grade, beginning of 12th. And I think what I've come to realize over the years is that I know that he is my person because he makes me a better person. He has helped me grow, and he really helped me come out of my shell in high school. I was a little bit on the shy side, a little bit of social anxiety, but kind of once we started dating, I was like, oh, whatever, I found my person, so I can be me too. I found me. And just through it all, he's a very supportive, not easily riled up. So basically he's my opposite. So we balance each other out well, typically. We dated through high school, made it through college with one breakup, which, sometimes I actually think is a very good thing because you know that they're your person. Got married in 2014, got our dog 2 years later, had our first baby in 2017. So she's now 4. Then we had our second baby in 2019. She's 3. And we just had a third little boy, and he's 7 months. So it's been a lot of kids in a short amount of time.
Yes. Well, you have to like each other to make that happen. So that's good.
Yes.
What would you say was the biggest shift for you guys when you went from, we knew each other through this high school season and through the college season, and then I think it was 3 or 4 years of being married before kids. What was the biggest shift you think after having that first baby and just all of the transition that brings?
So I think the biggest shift, and not really a shift, but I think it really brought out some of the different parenting styles from which we came from and how to balance that out with raising our own child. I want to say that was probably, that's the one that sticks out the most, is oh, wow, we were both raised really differently. How do we come to an agreement on how to raise this baby. And I will preface that by saying also that I come from a long line of working with children. I was a teacher. I was a pediatric occupational therapist. And he had not had so much experience with children. So that really also played into that dynamic.
Yeah, definitely. I love that you bring up the different parenting styles because I think that's something that we don't really even think to discuss before we have babies. We kind of have this idea that everyone is going to hold the same concepts and ideas, and it's just not true.
Yeah, and it's like pretty vastly different between the two of us. So
Yeah. Do you
yeah.
remember anything about those early conversations and the tough choices? Are there any big hot button issues that were tough choices for you to make together?
It's hard to remember. Sometimes it's quite a blur when you have 4 kids in 3, 4 years, whatever, 5 years. Nothing's like sticking out on the top of my head. I want to say it was really just, I think the early postpartum days are hard because his mom wanted to be really involved, which is great and lovely. But I also have my mom who's close, and I don't know, it's just something about having your own mom there. I think that was a little tough because his mom like had ideas too that she wanted to share, and not that, I didn't want to take them, but I don't know. I just felt more comfortable with my own mom. So I think that was kind of tough at first, and balancing that and figuring out how to balance that. Like, cause my mom's with my kids every single day she literally retired to watch my children.
Okay.
So that was a bit challenging, I'd say. And then I'd say just communication overall. Like when it's 2:00 a.m. and your baby is screaming and neither of you know why. And we're both like yelling at each other and taking the baby back. Like, no, give her to me. No, give her to me. I got it. And it's just like, you're like, what the heck are we doing? So I'd say that like for me personally, sleep deprivation played a huge piece in just like, I'm in a bad mood when I don't have sleep. And I think he doesn't always know how to address that.
Totally. Okay. So for those of you listening, if that resonated with you, I just want you to take a screenshot right now and share this with your community with something like, no good conversation happens at 2 a.m. Because I hear this all the time, right? Like we're tired, we are stressed, we're trying to problem solve, and that is when a lot of not nice things can come out.
Yes, totally.
Yes. I don't know if your parents ever said this to you, but there was that phrase of like, nothing good happens after, between midnight and 5. And that meant one thing, as a teenager and a college student. And the statement stays true, but it just takes on a different persona in the early postpartum days.
Absolutely. 100%.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So you guys have welcomed 3 kids in this season.
Yes.
And would you say that the communication, the ways that you're able to connect and be a team, would you say that has remained pretty consistent? Do you think, each one you've gotten a little bit more skillful? How has that felt?
I think it's been a mix. I think in some ways we've gotten more skillful as far as like falling into a routine and knowing like what each of us is, good at, and what the kids, like kids run to dad if they want to play and be goofy and silly. The kids run to mom when it's time to bed or calm down or they get hurt. And that's just like comes automatically. We've also kind of fallen better into like roles. He'll take dinner every night, which is wonderful because I'm not a fan of cooking. He likes cooking and I like cleaning. So that's just like been our routine. I would say communication and connecting, and like, so I'll be upfront. I've had horrendous postpartum anxiety that has gotten worse with each baby. And the sleep deprivation plays a huge piece in that.
Yes.
So like 3rd time around, also my 4-year-old was getting up. She was having a little jealousy with baby, then the baby's up. And that's where I feel like it's gotten worse. We've really broken down because I think when, in both of our brains, we have three little people to worry about now. So both of us have kind of like went on the back burner. Sometimes I joke, I'm like, we're just a mom and a dad right now. Like it just kind of is that season of life. And I think with the anxiety, it's just very hard because we've never really figured out a way to effectively, what's the word I want to say? I don't know, effectively extinguish difficult situations through my anxiety. You know, I always feel like he's not hearing me and he's really trying. So that's where we are stuck.
Yeah. Okay. Do you want to get into that?
Yeah, let's get into that.
Yes. Okay. I love it. So I want to just normalize that we all have these patterns. We all have ways that so many things play in here. You brought up like different upbringings. And so we just literally have different realities and expectations in our head. And that starts to even out a little bit, and we get to know each other and take on one another's realities, expectations, all of that. But every transition is a transition. And so it's always a time to revisit and relearn together and have these conversations. So I'm so glad that we're having this today. I talked to a mom on an app earlier today, and she's like, I just don't bring things up to my husband. And I'm like, okay, honey, like, let me say in a lot of love, that's not going to fix it. That's not going to make it better in the long run. Like, let's learn how to bring up hard things. That's going to be okay. So for you guys, you mentioned, kind of getting in these patterns of wanting to be heard, maybe anxieties playing out here. Do you have a recent example, or even just like, this is the pattern we keep getting into, that comes to mind for you?
Yeah, there's probably a couple. Of recent, I can't think of one. Well, I guess it's kind of recent. So one of the things that always seems to kind of spark an argument is when, like, with disciplining the kids or like behavior management, that whole deal, just managing the kids in general. I guess it's really hard for me to back off and let him, do his thing, because I do come from this background of working with children. So of course, like, I'm like, come on, I've done this and I've read the research and I know this. And he's like, but I have parental intuition too. And I think sometimes, we might go about it in the wrong way, where like, I'm like, correcting him in the moment. Like he says something to the kids and then I'm like straight on him, and maybe he doesn't appreciate that. And, I think both of us kind of have these personalities where, like, as a lot of people, as our children, don't like to be told what to do. So you kind of do the opposite. So that is one big struggle, is just around the kids. And I will say, like, with third kid, I've been a lot better backing off about like the whatever, dressing them whatever you want, diaper them however you want, bathe them however you want. But it's still, I'd say, like, that one sticking point right now is really like the discipline piece, the behavior management, because that's just where we have toddlers. So
yes,
they're at a testing limits phase.
Yes, that is a whole testing ground for everyone, and a really important thing to find some consistency in. So
Yes.
To reflect back, something that I heard you say was that you think that perhaps correcting him in the moment might bring up some kind of emotions, defensiveness. How does that play out? Does that escalate? Does that create ongoing tension?
Yes. So I'd say he is typically pretty good at biting his tongue. But he'll say like something like kind of passive aggressive or snippy to just make sure that I know that he didn't appreciate that. And then I tend to be like the explosive one. So then I kind of explode. And I'll totally admit, like, we do it in front of the kids, and it's mostly me, and I know better. But I guess in the moment it comes out. So he's typically a little bit better at restraining himself, and I guess I tend to hold grudges and he doesn't. But I guess we don't really ever like resolve it. Like the situation
Mm,
happens, we kind of like do our like cattiness or whatever, and then it's kind of done and over with. And I think a big part of that, we both hold stuff in, I guess. He's a little better than me, but I guess we both, I kind of explode in an angry way. He just kind of, he like escapes. I don't think he realizes he does it, but he'll like go out with his friends or like,
yeah.
leave and go do work or something. I guess so. I guess it never really gets resolved. And especially
Yeah.
in these early years, I typically go to bed right after the baby. So I feel like I personally feel like I don't have this like energy to
Mhm.
even like, re-engage with that. So I think that's what happens is it happens, it doesn't get resolved. So like the cycle never ends. It just kind of
Yeah.
starts over.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. That's such good insight and information. What would be the ideal outcome of those situations for you? Like if you could write a script, you were making a TV show about a family that was doing this really well, how would you write that script?
So I think ahead of time, we would really have set expectations about kind of like child managing behaviors, discipline, whatnot. Which again, is kind of hard
Mhm.
because there's like specific situations that arise, and in my head, I'm like, I think it's also very easy to look at a situation and be like, what are you doing? Or like,
Mhm.
this is what I would have done. Um, but in the moment, it's kind of like, I don't know. Well, I don't know. I just did what felt right. So I think kind of having those set ahead of time
Mhm.
would help. And we've tried that. Like we've bought like the Big Little Feelings course, and
Mhm.
we've both went through that. But again, I think I have a lot more practice than him.
Yeah.
It just kind of is what it is. And I think I'm maybe a little bit more like picky and forward about how, um, I think it goes back to my upbringing that I'm trying to
Mhm.
reparent my children a different way than I was parented.
Yeah.
So I think that's like a really big trigger for me.
Yeah.
Um, so maybe, me also working through that on my own so that it doesn't come out in this like angry, emotional way.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. You are so insightful to where you are and where you want to go. So that's really commendable. In these situations, I want to just pull in these processing styles real quickly. It sounds to me like perhaps you are the external, like you want to get it out, and your partner's the internal, or is that flipped?
Yeah, I want to say, yeah, he definitely keeps it away a lot more than me. I
Mhm.
tend to be the like keep it away, but I like perseverate it on my own mind like the whole time, and then it just explodes.
Mhm. Mhm. So do you find yourself playing it out in your head, telling yourself the story,
Oh yeah.
conjuring up emotions about the story that you told?
Yes. Oh yes.
Yes, so I think that's a really good place to enter into cycle breaking even and pattern breaking. Today's episode is sponsored by Love Lingual. Love Lingual has card decks that increase your communication and connection with carefully curated cards containing unique and thought-provoking conversation starters. Mike and I use the couples deck regularly to add something new to our conversation and just honestly to always be learning more about ourselves and one another. You can find your first deck at bit.ly/WTF Love Lingual. That's bit.ly/WTF Love Lingual. You can also find that link in today's show notes. I wonder what it could be like for you guys to find a different way to interrupt the pattern. So what I'm hearing is that your husband will maybe kind of make a slighted comment. It might be kind of passive aggressive, but it's like the shit like Mallorie, stop. Like we have to stop this right now. And so I'm wondering what a step could be like to insert some kind of code word or phrase because that is a starting point of we don't need a slighted passive aggressive comment to stop this, But we already know, like, he's recognizing this is a stopping point. This is an interruption point. Could we do something to interrupt that or like sound the alarms that is not conjuring more of an emotional domino effect? What does that bring up for you?
I think that would be amazing because when we have those fights later, like I get that super mom guilt, like, oh my gosh, why did I do that in front of my
Mhm.
children?
Mhm.
Um, but then also I think like what I've learned, and I've done some work with this, is that like I need to feel validated. I think like with my anxiety, that's I just need to feel heard. Like
Mhm.
you heard me, you validate that I'm upset.
Mhm.
And then but that's where we like because yeah, like
Yeah.
rear off. So I think yeah, maybe if we did have that like stop, regroup, kids
Yeah.
are here, take care of this later.
Yeah. Well, and so what you just said was that you tend to escalate because you're seeking validation and not in a, I hope that you understand this and it doesn't sound like a slighted comment.
Oh no.
So I'll be really gentle here. But it reminds me of thinking about parenting and our kids. And I identify with you here too, Mallory. Like, this is something I've had to work through. You know, our kids escalate and we're like, why is this like a level 10 situation? This should be a level 2 situation. And the reality is that they're like, you're not hearing me. You're not validating my feelings, so I'm going to escalate and escalate and escalate, and I might be throwing a tantrum and look ridiculous doing it, but I'm going to show you that this is my feeling.
Yeah, I think that's like you hit the nail on the head. And honestly, I would personally probably go to like that's a beautiful comparison. And
Yeah.
that like when you said that, I'm like, oh wow, oh my gosh.
Yeah. So so what I'm hearing is that something that could be expressed to your husband is like, honey, I want your support to not get to that level. Like, this is not my best self. This is not my best motherhood. This is not my best partnership, but I'm struggling because I need to feel seen and validated. And so I think that's just a good continual reminder and some language to use. Like, it's not an excuse for the way I escalated,
Mhm.
but what I'm looking for from you is some validation. That gives me a follow up question. Does he tend to be a fixer? Like, does this come into play?
Um, no, well, okay, so I'd say he's made a shift. Early
Mhm.
on, he probably was more of one. But in full disclosure, I can get really nasty sometimes
Mhm.
when we're having fights. Like, and I think, like I said, it's not an excuse, but my anxiety gets so high that
Mhm.
I'm. It feels low, but I've got used the divorce word. But I think, like you
Mhm.
said, it's me throwing a tantrum to be heard.
Mhm.
But I think he's grown where he stands his ground more, which is a good thing. But then I'm like, now I need to just amplify this to like 25. So-
Yes, it takes more to push him over the edge, but baby, I've got more.
exactly. So yeah, I'd say early on he was, and now he stands his ground more, and he is much better at being the one to calm down and then reach back out later and be like, "Hey, can we talk about this?"
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
sometimes I'm like, "Okay," and sometimes I'm still stewing, and I'm like, "No, I'm going to bed."
Mhm.
So
Yeah, so this may not be super pertinent to where you are now. Maybe it would have been after baby number 1, but I find a lot of times for my external processors, what they want is just to be seen and heard and validated. And often they have partners who are fixers, and then they're like, why did you come to fix me? Like, could you just see me and just hear me? So for those people, and for those of you listening, maybe you're in an earlier season of motherhood, maybe your partner is trying to fix, and it's, an earnest, well-intended behavior, but it's okay to say, to like preface with something, babe, I don't want you to fix this. I just want you to hear me right now. And I think that that helps us to set ourselves up for validation, for the kind of emotional connection we're looking for and not just getting answers. So I don't know if that was at play for you early on. It was definitely for me. And that was a progressive lesson that we had to learn and really identifying what our needs are.
Yeah, well, I think that's been a big piece for us in that with my anxiety can get like pretty intense. And I think
Mm-hmm.
he never really knew like I don't even know what you need. And
Yeah.
honestly, sometimes I'm like, I don't even know what I need. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
But now that I've done some work, I think like when you say that, like the like kid temper tantrum really like solidified it for me that,
Mm-hmm.
like you said, I think I just want him in the moment to like, even if he said, okay, I can see you're really upset right now.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
done. Like,
Yeah.
um, and to be seen. So I think like that is bringing up something recently. So I'll try to make a long story short, but I stay home. I'm working from home, doing a part-time and trying to build my own business. So
Mm-hmm.
my mom stays home with my kids. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm trying to kind of reparent. It's, you know, like
Mm-hmm.
our parents do the best they can. But there's a lot of things that I do differently with my children. So it's hard for her to make that change. So a lot of times I'm home and I hear, so I don't have a good space where I can escape from it. So I hear everything that's going on. That may not be how I would do it.
Yeah.
And I'm still trying to let go of some control with that. Um, but on days it gets to me, I think like he's my person. So I will text him like this big long thing. And I'm like, just have to get all my like anger and frustration out
Mm-hmm.
and be like, oh, mom did this and the girls are screaming their heads off. And all she did was give them candy or something. What, you know, whatever. I don't know. We're
Mm-hmm.
given to them.
Yes.
And I guess like initially in the beginning, he would like just ignore me or be like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, Mal, not this again. Like, blah, blah, blah. Because we could never come to a good solution with like how to like, do we send the kids to school? Like we have free daycare right now and they're with my
Mm-hmm.
mom. I should be thankful. Um, so I think there never like a solution never came out of that. But recently, I guess I had kind of changed my tone and kind of what you said. I was like, Kyle, I just really need you to hear that like I'm struggling here and it
Mm-hmm.
really upsets me to be home all day and hear this kind of stuff. And it's just like really heartbreaking to me. And I think that he was like, okay. And I I think I totally kind of low blowed a little bit where I was like, for Mother's Day, all I want you to do is hear that I am frustrated, staying at home, hearing everything that happens. The
Yeah.
end. Thank
Yeah.
you. And he did. He
Yeah.
validated. And I think since then I'm like,
Okay.
okay, this is
Yeah.
great. I feel
Yeah.
way better.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's so interesting the way I don't want to get on a full tangent here. And I know you've done a lot of like inner work and reparenting. And I don't know if you're familiar with the term of like shadow work, but they're just being these parts of us that want to be seen. They are in us. They are maybe like not our favorite traits about ourselves, but they don't just go away. It has to be validated. And sometimes that's our own work of inner validation. You know, if I'll give you an example, like if I get super jealous sometimes of someone else, then I'll be like, okay, you know what? Like that's cute, Chelsea, that part of you, that's, you know, this immature part of you is looking to be seen, is looking, you know, to have this feeling. I recognize it and I don't totally embody it. I don't take it back on. So sometimes we can see those emotions or those expressions almost like they're outside of ourselves. And I think we get to invite that into our relationship too. Like some things just get to be kind of third party, neutral. We just have to recognize them. We have to validate them, but we don't have to totally pin it on this is exactly who Mallorie is and what she always does, or, you know, the same with our partners. I think we get to let more things just be neutral. We just see them and we move on. But that also, I want to make sure we have some time to talk about your desire first, we had the desire for validation. And so I think this comes down to um, these continual check-ins with your husband, which it sounds like you're already starting, but this can even be in the midst of, you start to feel yourself escalated. And this could be, you know what, I don't want to get into that. Can we just pause for a moment, and can you just tell me that you see me and you hear me and this is hard? Another idea for that is to insert some kind of code word. And I like to make those really silly. Like, I don't know, it could be like pregnant giraffe, or you could make it a different name and just say, when we say this word, like, we know, okay, this is the pause time. This is we've gotten too far. We need to take a break. Like, let's walk away from this situation. But that leads me to this other part I want to get to that I hear from a lot of my specifically external processors, is that we want to have a solution. Like, it doesn't feel good for us to stop a conversation and then ruminate over what's going to happen. Are we going to come back to this? Here are 29,000 outcomes I've come up with in my brain before I even revisit the conversation with my partner. How is that
Yes.
for you?
Yes, 100%. That is me.
Mhm.
Like, I will come
Mhm.
until like one of us like steps up and says like, "Hey, I'm sorry about the other day," or "Hey, I am
Yeah.
like sitting there stewing on
Yeah.
everything." Like, yeah, just the worst case scenarios, like catastrophizing in my head.
Yes, which does not do good things to our brains and
Hmm.
bodies. And anxiety really does play like that.
Yes.
So, what I'm wondering is how we can add a step in to the process here, where maybe it's like, as soon as you walk away, you shoot a text that says 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 60 minutes. Like, when could we check back in on this? Or, I think oftentimes we don't revisit these conversations because we're waiting for the perfect circumstance. We're waiting for the night when all the kids are in bed and we're ready to lay down and snuggle and talk about it. And like, that's a unicorn. So how can we get more creative? Is it a shared Google Doc? Is it a texting thread? Is it a notepad you keep by your bed, where it's like, we might not be able to both show up for this conversation at the same time, but we are literally putting it somewhere and designating a time to pick it back up, so that, and this is, then the work for the external processor to say, you know what? I need to be present right now. I'm not going to be consumed by this, because there's a time to find a solution. What has that maybe been like, or what do you think that could be like with some different expectations set?
So I think that kind of what we discussed earlier, that seems to be the direction we're going. So like,
Mhm.
like you said, like I will just have all this in my head and I will just have to get it out in a text message. And it used to come out really nasty in a text message, but it was like, it's out of my head. It's
Mhm.
there, it's out in the open, and he can respond however he wants. But now I think I'm starting to make that shift of like, instead of getting nasty and just blah, 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 letting all out, let me like see how I can spin this in a way where like, I feel frustrated when you don't
Mhm.
see me, or whatever, see that I'm struggling, see that
Mhm.
motherhood is hard, and sometimes I just have a moment. um so I think that could be a really good tool for us, is the text. Because like you said, it like, sometimes I need that time to cool off.
Mhm.
And for some reason, sometimes I can't always say that stuff face to face initially. I don't really know why, but sometimes it just feels more comfortable to
Yeah.
start with text until everything settles down. And then I can be like, okay, now we can talk.
Mhm.
Um, but I think me remembering to say it in a respectful and positive way is the key piece to this.
Yes, yes, and I think too, prefacing our partners. So I don't know about you, but like, getting a super stressful text message in the middle of the day, like the work day, does not feel great,
Mhm.
especially when you don't know, like, okay, is this like an immediate solve, life or death? I need to stop what I'm doing, or are you unloading right now? So in those situations, I find it can be helpful to preface, don't read this, or like, you don't have to stop your day for this. Or preface, I do need help right now as soon as you're able to give it. So that is kind of the work on us as individuals. And this goes both ways to evaluate the severity of a situation. And sometimes it just feels good to get it off of our chest. And that's just what we need. We don't need the response, the feedback right away, anything. But we kind of owe it, I think, to our partners then to say, this is what I'm doing. That way, when I tell you I seriously need help, you know that this is a seriously I need help situation.
Yeah, I think that um like totally add that because like I said, I think I used to send these like texts where I just need to get it out, and he'd be
Yeah.
like almost like you're crying wolf again, like and I'm like I am just because I just want to say it, and
Mm-hmm.
then I guess he actually is pretty good being like, so like do I need to come home right now, or like this is everything, you got this.
Mm-hmm.
So I really like that, where if I just say it up front and he doesn't have to like freak out in the middle of the day,
Mm-hmm.
that's really good. And I think for me to be mindful of it, it's good because because he works for my dad. So sometimes I think I take advantage of the situation. Like, just leave. It's my dad. So, and
Mm-hmm.
he doesn't want to do that. So I think that's a really good strategy.
Yeah, and like you said, that's good mindfulness for us because we then get to kind of reclaim some control over the clarity. It's not just like I feel reckless, I don't understand myself, I'm not like I'm just getting things out, but we're taking responsibility for our own clarity and then bringing that to the table for our partners.
Yeah.
Man. Okay. So I feel like we have a couple of takeaways around this topic. One being like, let's insert something that is a escalation stopper that is agreed upon. It's, maybe it's a silly phrase that lightens the mood. Maybe it's something, an inside joke, or maybe it's just, some random word that your kids don't know that it's this interruption, but it doesn't take something, an emotionally driven comment to get someone to walk away or take that break. And then that second thing that sounds like you guys are already really working on, but can be even more forward and intentional with, is setting that expectation. Hey, I need to get this off my chest. This is urgent or this isn't urgent, which is, again, that personal responsibility and really communicating even more clearly with our partners. Is there anything else that's coming up for you?
Um, no, I want to say that's probably like, I think that's where that probably covers it, because I
Yeah.
feel like it's very cyclical, and because it's not
Yeah.
really, other than the discipline and behavior management, there's not, it sometimes it'll just be stupid stuff that we fight over, but it turns into that cycle where like we ramp up because I'm not feeling heard. And then
Yeah.
so I
Yeah.
think that's awesome because it can apply to lots of different
Totally.
situations.
Yes.
Um, yeah, I think, no, that's feeling like a good generalized strategy to use.
Yeah. I love that. And I also just want to echo something important that you said that I think a lot of moms miss, especially in the early days, is that parenthood, like entering motherhood, it's horrible timing, but it brings up all of our childhood and our inner needs and kind of those parts of us that are just wanting to be heard and validated and understood. And we might be a little angsty, or we might, I think that we tend to revert to some of our like teenage persona. I don't know if that's true for you, but I thought that was true
Mhm.
for me. A little ragey, a little edgy, a little defensive. That was me in high school, and that really came back out in early motherhood. And so that work of reparenting yourself, of welcoming yourself as a changed person and really like making space to get to know yourself again and to validate yourself and love yourself. Like that is hard work, but it also reduces the amount of tension we're bringing to our partners, the frustration we have with our kids. Like, I don't know about you, but I think that is probably up there as in the most important work we can
Oh
do
yeah.
is really addressing that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I think, something that I am learning that I don't know if it was a general thing with like our parents, but it was a lot of, do as I say, not as I do. But
Mhm,
we know that kids are sponges and
mhm.
model our behaviors.
Yep.
So I think that is something that's huge for me. And especially with our interactions, like I am telling them that when you feel bad, walk away and take deep breaths. But here I am, like
Yeah.
jumping on their dad's back. And I'm like, okay, maybe that's why my 4-year-old explodes when
Mhm,
her sister does
mhm,
something because that's what mom does. So
mhm.
I think if we, and as moms, like that, like you said, like learning and like creating good human beings is like totally what I want. And
Mhm.
so like that modeling piece is just so huge, not only to our relationship as husband and wife, but as parents to our children.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, so that's huge.
Yeah. Well, thank you for bringing that up. Um, I know you just kind of passed on some wisdom, but as we wrap up, is there anything that you would want to pass on to a new mom, maybe a first time mom or someone that's just really in that early season? What would you pass on to her?
Ooh, I would pass on. Let me maybe something I would not pass on. So
Perfect.
something that I would not pass on is, like enjoy every moment, soak
Mm,
up every moment, because guess what? Motherhood is not unicorns and rainbows.
hmm.
And I like being a mom is my most precious, favorite, hardest thing in the world. But like I love being a mom. It's me.
Hmm.
I guess what I'm learning is don't be so hard on yourself.
Mm,
Um, you really, if you were to this point where you were thinking about like, oh shoot, like I yelled in front of my kid, like
yeah.
you're probably doing a good job. You're doing the best you can. So I think don't be too judgmental of yourself.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. And then like when it comes to husband and wife, I think it's hard because I go back and forth. Like we're doing a lot of work, but a lot of times like our partners are doing a lot of work too.
Hmm.
So I think something that I'm working on, and I think something that my husband really appreciates, just sometimes just saying like, thanks for doing that.
Hmm.
Thanks for making dinner every single
Hmm.
night.
Hmm.
And it doesn't take a lot. And I think for me too, if he's just like, wow, you had the kids all day on Friday, like I know that's hard. Thanks for
Yeah.
watching them on Friday. Even
Yeah.
though it's our job, just validating like, yeah, that's kind of hard. Thanks for doing that.
Yeah. I
I
think
think
that's
that can make,
huge.
yeah, huge shifts for both of
Totally.
you.
Totally. Yeah. I think it's a lot less about the like extravagant dates and trips, and it's more about the literal thank yous and small moments in the day to day.
Hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Well, Mallory, I know that your share is going to be helpful to other moms who are navigating this and wading through these waters. So thank you for being willing to share a bit about your story and your journey. And we just thank you for showing up.
Yeah. No, thanks for having me. This is
Yes.
this is incredible. I love supporting other moms.
Oh,
I think it really takes a village. So
yeah, it does. Okay. Well, thank you. And may you just be blossoming and cared for and validated and have a really sweet week ahead of you. If you've enjoyed today's episode, I want to invite you to explore coaching with me. I help my clients identify where they are, where they want to be, and what is standing in their way. And then we get to work changing mindsets, altering patterns, and developing the communication skills, connection points, and personal confidence you need to live the life that you want to be living. And you deserve to be living the fullest version of yourself for your own experience and for your family. I offer a free 15-minute exploration call where we just chat about where you are, where you want to be, and whether coaching is the route to get there. You can schedule that free call at bit.ly/WTF Chels. That's bit.ly/WTF Chels. And I cannot wait to chat with you.